Hello and welcome to another Sky Fantasy Football video. Today we're back with another Q&A. This week we're looking at Game Week 7. We've got a lot more questions this week to look at. I think we've got 12, 13, maybe even 14 questions to have a look at. So once again, thank you to everyone who sent those questions in over on Twitter. And an even bigger thank you to everyone who does it every week, because I know there is a few of you that do so, but this is going to be a longer video, so I don't want to waste too much time, so let's jump straight into things. With Ishmael Ali, who says, is it worth bringing in another Spurs asset for the triple single game day, or will Bissouma suffice? So obviously there's a lot of single game days coming up for Spurs. They have 3 games in a row which all come on single days. Normally I would say Bissouma you could probably get away with if there was maybe only one captaincy day, but because there's 3 you're really going to be wanting one of the explosive attackers. And with so many players that a lot of us are looking to kind of transfer out right now as well, there's a lot of opportunities to get in a lot of the big Spurs players as well. So I think maybe even 2 or 3 Spurs players for those days. You could go for the likes of Maddison, Son, even Romero as well, who's probably going to be a popular transfer because it's very difficult to find good defenders right now. So Romero, Son, Maddison, maybe Richarlison if he can keep the goals going as well. And you're going to have Bissouma as well. So that's 5 players there that are probably going to be very good. The next question comes from Ian, who asks, should I take out Anderson for Alvarez with no fixture gain, or just opt for Sunday players like Ferguson, Robertson, Shah, Gross or Son? Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't really like Alvarez as a Sky option. He kind of doesn't really fit like the typical Sky kind of player. Obviously he's on some good form and stuff, but how many times have we said that about a City player, how they're nailed now, they're on good form, and then they get benched at the weekend. It's one of those ones where you're just going to be gambling on Pep Roulette again. Obviously with Bernardo Silva's injury, it now looks like he will be starting, and obviously Alvarez said that he was basically undroppable. But another thing with that is we've also got City's fixtures coming up, which are going to start getting very, very difficult soon. There's a lot of other good striker options out there that you're going to want, especially for future captain days. So you can see maybe for game week 7 and 8, on a short term, Alvarez would be very good. But after that, it starts to get very, very difficult, and that's pretty much up to the overhaul. Overhauls, I think, game week 22. So really, you're looking right up until Christmas that City's fixtures are very difficult, and I don't think you're going to be keeping Alvarez for that whole time. I don't know how long Bernardo Silva's back, how long he's out for. But yeah, I think for me, I don't really know about Alvarez. I think when you've got two of your 3 striker spots being taken up by City players, when there's the likes of Watkins, obviously Watkins isn't doing as well right now, but Awoniyi as well, Jackson as well, in the same kind of category as Watkins. There just is a lot of strikers that you're probably going to end up wanting at some point, which is going to Alvarez is just going to cause a problem. I think for the likes of like FPL and stuff, he'll be good, because you can only keep him. You only need to keep him for a few weeks, and then you can transfer him back out. And Sky is a bit different. I think it is nailing in 2 transfers, and you don't really get shot tiers or anything from him that much either. So I think for me, especially in your situation with no fixture gain there as well, I probably would just opt for one of the Sunday players. The next question comes from Kai, who asks, who are the best Jackson replacements? I already own Awoniyi, debating on going early on a West Ham asset like James Ward-Prowse or Bowen for captaincy in game week 11. I think, to be honest, you have just answered your own question. I think Ward-Prowse looks like a fantastic replacement for Jackson. Again, I don't think there's really too many defenders I'd be going for. In terms of strikers right now, maybe I'd be looking at giving it a couple of weeks. Maybe you can look towards some of the Spurs players if you've got money in the bank for that. I think we're maybe like 2 or 3 weeks away from that. But Ward-Prowse as well, if you don't have a Villa player, I think could be a very good player to get in right now. He has looked very, very good since joining West Ham, yet to blank as well, still getting 2 goals, 2 assists in his 4 games, and could be a very, very good captaincy as well for that day as well. So I think if you don't own someone like a Villa player, Ward-Prowse would be my pick over the 2 anyways. But I do like the idea of going for a West Ham player early. We are still a while away from that game though, so if he gets injured, you might be in a bit of bother, but I do think for the future games you'll be good, because West Ham fixtures are very, very good up until the overhaul as well. So yeah, I like that. Jackson to Ward-Prowse looks like a good shout. The next question comes from Gordon Bell, who asks, who says, Onana doesn't inspire me at all, but the fixtures look really good. Would you stick or switch to Pope on Sunday? Also, I've taken out all my Chelsea assets. Would you go back for someone for the single, or can it be skipped? The thing with Onana is obviously Man United do still have very good fixtures coming up, like the next 7 or 8 weeks, excluding maybe one fixture against City, are very good fixtures. So for me, I don't think you really have to get rid of him. No one's really keeping clean sheets now anyways, and Onana has had saves tier, I think, in 2 of the 5 games so far. So I think when you're if you're making that transfer, it's a very luxury transfer. If it's a preference and you've only used maybe 2 or 3 transfers so far, then sure, go for it. But if you're using like 6, 7, 8 and more than that transfers, I probably would just stick with Onana. To be honest, I'm not seeing anything wrong with going from because the fixtures between United and Newcastle aren't very different. They're both very good fixtures. So the difference would be saves, and Pope and Onana are kind of getting the same amount of saves anyway. So I would honestly just be sticking with Onana. If things do get really bad, there's going to be hop-on opportunities for players like Pope and other goalkeepers as well in the future. So I wouldn't be rushing into that transfer, to be honest. In terms of the Chelsea assets, you've taken them all out. Would you go back for someone for the single? I mentioned them on Tuesday, but I think João Palhinha is a very, very good option for the single if you want someone for that. I definitely wouldn't go back to the Chelsea players, because the fixtures get really hard for Chelsea in a couple of weeks. I think it's again about 3 weeks away, so I wouldn't go back to them just for the single game. So I think if you do want someone and someone you can keep for a while, I think João Palhinha for Fulham could be a very good captaincy. They are 7.8 million, and you know what you're getting from him. You're getting the tackles, and he has had passes so far this season as well as a goal. We all know from last year the kind of goal threat he can provide as well. So I wouldn't go back to the Chelsea players, and I would go probably to Palhinha if you did want a captaincy for that day. Next up is FPL Bowen, who asks, how many transfers do you roughly plan on having at overhaul time? This is my first Sky season, and I feel I've used too many already, and that's 8 with a rank of 6.4k. So first of all, I think you're doing fantastic, to be honest, with the 6.4k rank. I think you're probably beating both of my teams right now as well so far. 8 transfers used as well is probably about the amount that you want to be using now anyway. I always go back with the rank. I always go back to last season. I was sitting 18,000th at the overhaul, and I still managed to get 270th by the end of the season. So again, at this stage in the season, the rank really doesn't matter too much as long as you're not in like the 100,000th. In terms of the transfer plan, this is kind of what I had at the start of the season. So we're in game week 7 now, obviously, and I allowed myself 10 transfers up until game week 10. So going off that plan, you're sitting on 8 right now, which would give you 2 more for the next 3 weeks. And again, as you say, how many before the overhaul? Again, I originally planned to have 20 or to use 20 and allow myself 30 after the overhaul. But I think again, if you've got 25, that's halfway point, and you're using half your transfers is not bad as well. I think anything more than 25, you probably need to cut it back a bit by the second half of the season, which you don't really want to do because you want to kind of attack it more. That's why I like to have more transfers left over for the second half of the season. But yeah, I think you're doing perfectly fine with 8 transfers used. The next question comes from Rowan Carrera, who asks what to do with Chelsea assets, for example Colwill, Chilwell and Jackson. Is there any long-term moves you have in mind? I think for my Chelsea assets, I've kind of narrowed them down a bit now without Jackson in my team. My first team I've got Chilwell, my second team I still have Enzo and Chilwell. I think for Chilwell is just going to be a move to Romero in both teams for that. I think there's still a good couple of weeks of the Chelsea players with decent fixtures, and then I'll hop off of them, and that's kind of when Spurs' good good fixtures and single game days come around. So it'll be Chilwell to Romero for me, and that saves 0.6 million as well for other moves. As well in my second team, I'm planning on getting Enzo out for Salah. I think what move I want to do is get Diaz out, I think, before, as I said, the City fixtures. I'll pop them up again. So after game week 8, after they play Wolves, I want to get Diaz out because he's way too much money to have for someone who's probably not going to keep too many clean sheets in there. So Diaz will come out and save some money, and then I want to try to get Salah in. In terms of Colwill, I think it's probably just depending on how much money you've got. Again, a couple of the Spurs defenders look decent. Adoji's 7.7, Romero's 7.9. There's a good few options there for the Spurs players. Other than that, again, as was said previously, Ward-Prowse at 8.4 could be a good option if you can get a midfielder in, and if you need a captaincy. Diaby again, if you need a captaincy for the Aston Villa West Ham game, could be a good option at 8.1. But there is a few. I think as long as you're covering captains, you're okay. But for me, it's going to be Spurs players. Our next question is from Jack Curbs, who says Johnson straight to Martinez or Pope. Also Chilwell to Torres or Konza, because I'm low on funds. So starting off with the goalkeepers, obviously if you watch the game week preview already, we're kind of between 3 goalkeepers right now for making the transfer this week. It's between Nick Pope, Emiliano Martinez and Robert Sanchez. So we've got a bit of a graphic here just kind of comparing the 3, just to kind of get an idea of who could possibly be the best one. We've obviously got Nick Pope as the most expensive goalkeeper, Martinez is kind of the mid-range goalkeeper, and Sanchez as the cheaper one. In terms of points, Sanchez actually has the most points so far. That is coming from the 2 clean sheets from Chelsea. Pope comes in second, and Martinez obviously missed a game as well through injury, so he's down on 11. In terms of saves, it's kind of Pope who's leading the way there. He's got 3 save tiers in the first 5 games. So again, it's probably Pope is probably looking like the better one. In terms of fixtures as well, Pope and Martinez kind of on the same kind of level there. Pope with the better, like, nearer fixtures, and Martinez's are probably better in the later weeks. Sanchez probably in terms of fixtures is not that great, so you wouldn't be hoping for clean sheets from him. You'd definitely be relying on the save points. Again, Sanchez, if you're going to put Sanchez in, he's one that you're going to just keep for the whole season. He's going to start for Chelsea, and again, he's cheap enough that you won't have to make any transfers. The problem with Pope at 7.6 is that I think you're going to be more inclined to sell him if you end up low on budget. So you don't want to put Pope in and then in 4 weeks' time you're sitting there like, I need an extra 0.3 million to make this transfer. I've got 7.6 and my goalkeeper, I'll just downgrade him, and then you've wasted the transfer. So if you're putting Pope in, make sure you're planning in advance to make sure you've got enough money for your other transfers. But again, as I say, I think Pope probably does look like the best option there. But I think he could be on par with Martinez. Both of them, again, as I said, the fixtures look perfectly fine. So if you want Pope and you've got the money, I would probably go for Pope. Martinez, if you need a captaincy for the Aston Villa West Ham, I probably would go for him. That way you don't have to make another transfer elsewhere. And again, if you're running low on money, I probably would go for him as well. The only way I would go for Sanchez is if maybe you've used loads of transfers and you just need a goalkeeper who's going to sit there for the season. I'd probably go for him. But again, it's probably between Pope and Martinez for the goalkeepers there. As you, in your situation, obviously you say you're low on funds, so I probably would go for Martinez. And then you're saying Chilwell to Torres or Konza. I'd probably do what I said in the last question. I'd probably give it 2-3 weeks for Chilwell and then move him on to Romero. He's the same price as Torres and Konza anyway, and you're going to have that Villa cover with Martinez as well. So for me, I think I would go for Martinez and then I would wait and go for Romero in your situation. The next question comes from FPL Spartans, who says, is Sunday the time to tap into the Newcastle defence? In the past, the defenders haven't got past tiers but the fixtures look good for clean sheets. Also I have Ederson. Should I keep him or switch for Pope? For the Newcastle defence, again, it's kind of like the same boat as Alvarez. They're good for like FPL, but not really for Sky. As you say, you were kind of looking at Pope anyways. I think Pope's definitely the one that you want to go for if you're getting one of the Newcastle defenders. In terms of the Newcastle defence as a whole, I don't really like them, to be honest. Again, as we said, there's not really too many clean sheets going about in the Premier League this season. So even when you're looking at the easy fixtures for Newcastle, it's maybe not going to be great. So you are going to be wanting to fall back on those past tiers. And Newcastle defenders are kind of those players that could end up just getting 2 points every week. Again, they're probably the best defenders you can go for right now, because no one's really performing in terms of getting like Chilwell out and stuff. If you get Chilwell and Colwell, I think maybe like a Botman, it's 8.6 could be like a fairly okay option. But as I said, I do think the Spurs players later down the line are going to be more beneficial. And I think especially if you're going for Pope as well, you don't have to double up on the Newcastle defence. I think for value for money, they're not really there this year. Like the likes of Trippier being 9 mil plus, I would rather just have Saliba, who also can keep clean sheets and is going to get past tiers as well. So I do think with the Newcastle defence there is just better options. Right now, maybe not so much, because the good defenders have hard fixtures. So at that point, I think you just need to sit in your hands and leave the transfer and just see it through until the better players do have good fixtures. In terms of Ederson to Pope, I think that's a fair move as well, to be honest. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at goalkeepers and just looking to move on to one of the three that we just spoke about. Ederson to Pope I think is probably a good move. As again, I'll bring the City fixtures up once again. You're going to get the Nottingham Forest game out of Ederson, and then yes, you'll miss out on Wolves, but there's no real fixture gains to gain from that next week, I don't think, and then you're missing out on those points. And we all know how Ederson is on Sky. He's not going to really get saves, so that looks like a bunch of 2-pointers for Ederson for the next while anyway. And yeah, so I would probably look to move again onto one of Pope or Martinez. Next up is Ian Parron, who asks, if Johnson is replaced by Henderson for Palace, would you downgrade another player to afford Pope? For me, I think Johnson's just a total write-off. I think with Henderson sitting there, it's always going to be lingering over your head that Johnson's going to get benched. And even with that, Johnson's just not really getting any points. The saves are quite low. They're not really keeping any clean sheets, again similar to most other goalkeepers. In terms of downgrading another player, I think it's very situational in that case, because it really depends like on transfer count, on who your other players are. I think for the best player to downgrade, I think I'll say it again, I think Diaz is probably a good option. Downgrading Diaz to someone, and then you can definitely afford Pope. But as I said as well with the previous questions, you don't want to be getting Pope in and then not having any budget for future transfers. So I think if you're planning your transfers for the future and you know you can afford Pope, I would do so. And in terms of downgrading another player, again, I think it depends on your transfers. If you've only used 4 or 5 transfers, then sure, like there's not going to be any harm in using 2 to get the goalkeeper you want. But I think if you're using if you've used 9 or 10 transfers or something so far, I probably wouldn't downgrade and just go for one of the cheaper goalies like Martinez and Sanchez. In terms of downgrading someone for Pope, I think I probably would have to pick Diaz for that question. Next up is Colin Johnson with another Ederson to Pope dilemma. We've got Ederson to Pope on Sunday, though I've just got Ederson in for Onana. That'll be 3 games with Ederson. Is it a wasted transfer? I think honestly it probably is a wasted transfer, but at the same time I wouldn't let that put you off making the transfer. Like sometimes you just have to accept that you've made a bad transfer and just get on with it. Like the worst thing you can do in Sky is make a transfer and then it doesn't work out, and then you just keep them because you want it to work out. But I do think Ederson to Pope is probably just going to be a good move on Sunday for you. I'm kind of in the same boat with Isak. I put him in my second team. If he doesn't start on Sunday, I'm probably just going to have to accept that and get him out after 2 weeks, which is quite unfortunate. But as I say, I do think Ederson to Pope is probably a good move for you. And you just have to kind of take that on the chin sometimes, that you're going to make a bad move. If all 50 moves that you made in a season were good, you'd probably be winning the game. So I think that's just one of those ones that's quite unfortunate, and you just have to move on with it, really. Next up is Adam, who says, for managers that avoided the Foster bullet or Bayer, is Luton Burnley a skip or a wait and see? Also, if Alvarez keeps scoring, there's a chance to move off a 1-8 on the 8th of October. I realise there's Haaland, but if he doubles to 50% ownership and keeps up with him, then what are your thoughts on that? Again, with the Alvarez thing, I think I kind of covered that at the start. I don't really think he's much of an option for Sky. So I probably would look to move a 1-8 onto someone else. For managers avoided Foster or Bayer, is it a skip and wait and see? I think probably, to be honest. There is obviously a chance to get Bayer in still on that single day. Like I think I said it in either this week's game week preview or last week's. There is a 5 for 2 for like City players, and as I was just saying about getting Diaz out, it is an option if you really wanted to cover it. But I think for most of us, it's probably just going to be a skip. Because it's not really going to be worth 2 transfers to get someone in and transfer them back out again. And again, we see it's probably it could easily be one of those games. It's just 0-0, 1 each, and no one gets points. So yeah, I think it's probably the easiest skip that you will get all season, because it's 2 teams that you just don't want to own a player from. And for the penultimate question, we have George Thomas, who says, is there a case for continuing to hold Onana through the decent fixtures, even though he looks poor? Lots of opportunities to gather info and many hop-off points, or would you just do it this Sunday? Again, I think this is another question I've kind of covered already. I do think you should just keep Onana. The fixtures look great. They're not going to not keep a single clean sheet. You know, they're kind of on the same board as every other team in the Premier League, where the clean sheets are lacking anyway. And Onana's going to get the saves. You're looking at the defence that kept the most clean sheets all season last season, so they don't just turn really bad all of a sudden. So for me, I think I would just be holding Onana if I had him. Again, you're looking at the goalkeepers, and he's a cheap enough goalkeeper that you don't really have to worry about the price. So for me, I'm just holding them. The fixtures look fantastic. And again, there's only really one out of the next 7 or 8 where you would expect no clean sheet. But the clean sheets are going to happen, and as long as you're getting saves in there as well, I think Onana is probably a keep. But as I say, the goalkeepers in general right now aren't looking fantastic, so it's just about picking one with good fixtures and one that's going to get save tiers as well. And last but not least, the final question comes in from Streaky, who asks, should I try to get in Alvarez for, say, Chilwell and leave Enzo for captaincy against Fulham, or has the Alvarez train passed? Again, I think I have already answered this question. I don't really like Alvarez as an option. He's probably going to be good for 2 weeks again. As I say, in FPL, he's probably going to be a good option. For Sky, I probably wouldn't do it. In terms of getting Chilwell or Enzo, I think Enzo probably is just the better captaincy anyway against Fulham. Over Chilwell. So if you are looking to get Chilwell out, I think, as I said as well previously, I think Romero in a couple of weeks is a good opportunity to do that. There's a lot of captaincy days coming up. You don't want to be using that striker spot up for someone who could get rotated for Pep. And yeah, for me, I'm just going to finish it there. I don't think he's a great option. Again, I'm going to bring the goalkeepers up again, because it is a big question that we've seen a lot in the video. For me, I think I've settled on going with Pope in one team, and Martinez in the other team, just because I'd like to cover one of them. In one team I've got Watkins, the other team I don't have a Villa player as well, so Martinez covers the captaincy for me. And yeah, I'm happy with Pope in one team, because I do think he is probably the best option of the 3, and I'm going to go for Martinez in the second. Covers a captaincy and he's cheaper, and in that team I want to get Salah in for Enzo at some point, so as I say, he's cheaper, so it frees up more budget as well. So let me know what kind of goalkeeper or what goalkeeper you're going to be going for on Sunday. Hopefully the video helped you out a wee bit in trying to make that decision. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe as well. I think this one's probably going to be quite long because there was a lot of questions to go through, so make sure to hit the like button, and I'll see you all in the next video.